The crow sitting on the wire above your street right now already knows your name. Not a sound it makes when you walk by. Not a warning call it uses for everyone in the neighborhood. Your name. A specific, consistent sequence of sounds that it uses only for you, that it is shared with every other crow in your area. And that those other crows recognize and respond to even if they have never seen you before in their lives. And in 2024, when scientists fed hundreds of thousands of recorded crow conversations into one of the most advanced artificial intelligence systems ever applied to animal communication, that is exactly what they found. The crows had named us. All of us. Specifically, individually. And they had been talking about us constantly in far more detail and with far more structure than anyone was prepared to discover. This is not a metaphor. This is not scientists being cute about animal behavior. This is what the data showed. And once you understand what it means, you will never look at a bird on a wire the same way again. Here's the part that makes researchers genuinely uncomfortable. The crows did not just name us. The AI found evidence that they plan around us, that they share information about us across distances of hundreds of miles, that they transmit specific knowledge about specific humans from one generation to the next, so that young crows born after you first entered their territory already have a profile on you before they ever see your face. And that, when the researchers got too close, when the crows figured out that they were being studied, something happened in their communication patterns that the AI could no longer decode. Something new appeared, something that spread through the local crow population and then outward into neighboring territories with the speed of a virus, something the machine could not parse. The scientists studying this are still trying to figure out what that means, and the answer they are most reluctant to consider is the one the data keeps pointing toward. But we will get to that. Start with the surveillance operation that has been running in your neighborhood since long before you were born. Crows have been living alongside human beings for thousands of years, not because they were domesticated, not because humans invited them, because crows are extraordinarily good at identifying opportunities and extracting information from their environment. And human settlements turned out to be one of the richest environments on the planet for a bird with those abilities. Food is concentrated in human areas. Threats are predictable. And humans, unlike most predators, follow consistent routines that a sufficiently observant animal can learn to read and exploit. Crows learn to read us. And for decades, most scientists assumed that what crows were doing with that information was relatively basic. A crow sees a person carrying food. A crow remembers that person is a source of food. A crow sees a person who previously threatened it. A crow avoids that person. Simple stimulus response learning. The kind of thing a fairly intelligent animal can do without anything resembling language, planning, or social communication. That assumption was wrong, but nobody knew exactly how wrong until the machines got involved. For several years before the 2024 AI study, researchers in Spain had been recording a population of carrion crows in extraordinary detail. They placed small microphones near nests and attached biologgers to individual birds, capable of capturing every sound those birds produced throughout an entire day. What they collected was a dataset of a scale no previous crow research had come close to reaching. Hundreds of thousands of individual vocalizations. And here's the first thing that surprised the researchers before the AI ever got involved. The vast majority of what crows produce is not the loud, harsh caw that humans associate with them. That famous sound is actually a relatively rare communication event. Most of what crows say to each other is quiet, low-amplitude murmuring sounds, soft and continuous, sitting just below the threshold where a human observer standing nearby would register them as significant. For decades, those sounds went almost entirely unstudied, not because researchers did not know they existed, but because nobody had a tool capable of processing them at the scale needed to find patterns. The data sat there, enormous and unreadable, until the Earth Species Project got involved. The Earth Species Project is a US-based nonprofit with a specific mission. Apply the most advanced artificial intelligence available to the problem of animal communication and find out what animals are actually saying to each other. They had previously worked on whale calls, dolphin clicks, and primate vocalizations. When they turned their tools on the Spanish crow dataset in 2024, they were expecting to find what most animal communication research finds: a set of discrete signals. This call means food. That call means predator. That other call means come here. A vocabulary without grammar. Labels without relationships. The kind of communication system that is genuinely impressive for an animal, but still clearly separated from human language by a categorical gap. The AI did not find that. What it found instead pushed that categorical gap somewhere nobody was ready to put it. The machine identified structure in the crow vocalizations. Not just variety, not just a range of different sounds with different functions. Structure. Specific repeating, rule-governed patterns in the way sounds were combined and ordered. In human language, this is called syntax. Syntax is the system of rules that determines how words are arranged so that they carry meaning. Without syntax, language is just a collection of labels, a list of names for things. With syntax, language can describe relationships between things, encode information about events that happened in the past or might happen in the future, and communicate ideas that go beyond pointing at whatever is directly in front of you right now. The AI was finding the statistical signature of syntax in crow communication, not metaphorically, not as a rough approximation. The patterns the machine identified were the same kinds of patterns that linguists look for when they are trying to determine whether a sequence of sounds qualifies as structured language rather than complex but unstructured noise. To understand how significant that is, you need to understand what scientists previously believed about the crow brain and why they believed it. For more than 100 years, neuroscience operated under an assumption that turned out to be completely wrong. The assumption was that higher intelligence, the kind of cognition required for language and planning and social reasoning, required a cerebral cortex. The cortex is the wrinkled outer layer of the brain found in mammals, including humans, where most of our complex thinking happens. Birds do not have a cerebral cortex. Their brains are smooth. So for over a century, scientists looked at bird brains, noted the absence of the cortex, and concluded that the hardware for complex cognition simply was not there. Birds were limited, their brains were limited, and that was that. What those scientists did not appreciate is that evolution is not limited to one solution. The mammalian cortex is one way to build a brain capable of complex cognition. It is not the only way. Birds evolved an entirely different brain structure called the pallium, which looks nothing like the mammalian cortex on the outside and shares almost no structural similarities that would be obvious to a 19th century anatomist. But at the cellular and functional level, it accomplishes very similar things. Inside a crow's compact brain, neurons are packed at a density that is genuinely extraordinary. The ratio of brain size to body size in corvids, the bird family that includes crows, ravens, rooks, and jays, rivals the ratio found in great apes. Researchers studying corvid cognition began describing them as feathered apes more than a decade ago. After the 2024 AI study, that description started sounding less like a colorful scientific metaphor and more like a precise, literal statement. Brain imaging research conducted in the years leading up to the AI study had already begun mapping what happens inside a crow's brain when it encounters a specific human face. When a crow sees a person it has previously associated with a threatening experience, multiple brain regions activate simultaneously. The imaging shows particularly strong activation in the region functionally equivalent to the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for processing fear and threat responses in humans and other mammals. What this means in practical terms is that when a crow recognizes a face it considers dangerous, it is not simply retrieving a stored visual memory and generating an automatic behavioral response. It is experiencing something measurably similar to fear. The recognition is simultaneously cognitive and emotional, processed through interconnected systems that link memory, visual identification, and emotional response into a single integrated experience. This is the same fundamental architecture underlying human threat responses. Two completely different evolutionary lineages arrived at the same solution independently, and the result is a creature whose relationship with specific humans it has encountered is not instinctual or categorical, but deeply personal, specific, and apparently long-lasting. The most famous demonstration of how far crow facial recognition goes came from research conducted by Dr. John Marsluff at the University of Washington. Marsluff wanted to test whether crows could identify individual human faces with enough precision to maintain that recognition over time. He was also aware that putting his actual research team at long-term personal risk of being hated by every crow on a university campus was not an ideal experimental design. So he used masks. His team selected a specific mask with distinctive features and wore it while capturing, banding, and releasing crows on campus. The birds were not harmed, but being caught and handled was clearly stressful. The crows responded with aggressive vocalizations and physical resistance. Then the team stopped wearing the mask entirely and went back to their ordinary faces. The crows had no way to identify them as the same people who had done the catching. What happened next was not subtle. Every time any member of the team put that mask back on, crows throughout the campus area immediately began scolding the mask wearer, following them, and in some cases physically diving at them. The crows had not learned to recognize specific individuals. They had encoded the face itself as a threat signal that triggered a coordinated group response. But the part that rewrites what we thought we understood about animal social communication is what happened over the following years. Other crows, birds that had never been captured, that had never been near the original experiment, began responding to the mask with the same intensity as the ones that had the direct experience. Young crows, born after the initial captures were already complete, attacked the mask the moment they saw it. When Marsliff put the mask on 5 years after the original experiment, most of the birds that had actually been caught were dead, their natural lifespans concluded. The population attacking the mask was composed almost entirely of individuals with no personal experience of the threat whatsoever. But they knew the face. The information about that specific face, that specific threat, had been transmitted from one generation of crows to the next, not through genetic instinct, not through any fixed biological programming, through deliberate social communication. The first generation had described the dangerous face to their neighbors, their offspring, and anyone else in the network who would listen. The description was accurate enough to enable recognition across individuals who had never seen the original. The emotional charge attached to it was strong enough to motivate aggressive behavior in birds born after the original threat was gone. This is cultural transmission of specific information about a specific individual. It is the kind of behavior scientists had assumed was unique to humans. The AI study provides the mechanism for how it works. Because what the machine found in the crow vocalizations was not just syntax and not just emotional markers, it found something the researchers did not initially have the right vocabulary to describe. The AI identified sound sequences that appeared to function as unique identifiers for specific individuals, specific humans the crows had encountered in their territory. These were not general category labels, not a broad signal meaning human approaching or potential threat nearby. They were specific, consistent sequences of sounds used for one particular individual and not applied to others. The same sequence would appear in the vocalizations of multiple different crows in the area when the same specific person came into range. Even crows that had not been present at the original encounter with that person used the same sequence. The AI classified these as functioning like proper nouns. They were names. Not names in the abstract, arbitrary sense that human names typically are. The name John means nothing about any specific John. But these crow identifiers appeared to carry embedded information, acoustic properties, that corresponded to how the crows had categorized the named individual in their assessment systems. The sound used to refer to a human associated with food sources had different structural properties from the sound used to refer to a human associated with threat. The name encoded the relationship. And crucially, those names were being broadcast continuously, updated in real time as named individuals moved through crow territory, and received by every crow within communication range, who then updated their own behavioral readiness accordingly. Your face has been filed. Your name is in circulation. And if you have ever done something that crows in your area found threatening, or conversely, if you have consistently provided them with food, that information is attached to your identifier, and being shared with every crow that the ones near you can reach. The AI also detected something in the timing of crow vocalizations that the researchers had not anticipated. Complex, structured vocal exchanges occurring before events, not in response to them. Crows gathering in groups and producing extended vocal sequences prior to any external stimulus appearing that would prompt a reactive call. Prior to departing for food sources, prior to confrontations with other animals, prior to changes in group movement. The machine determined that these pre-event sequences shared consistent statistical properties that distinguished them clearly from other types of crow communication. The researchers described them as planning sequences. The crows were not just reacting to the world as it happened around them. They were discussing what to do before doing it. They were coordinating in advance. The concept that animal communication exists only in the present tense, that non-human creatures can only signal about what is immediately happening around them right now, does not survive this finding. Crow communication reaches forward in time. They are talking about things that have not happened yet, and a substantial portion of what they talk about involves us. The AI analysis found that references to humans appear consistently throughout a crow's day, including during periods of low activity when no human is visible in the immediate area, no food source is being monitored, and no immediate threat is present. The crows discuss humans the way humans discuss people they know. The machine detected distinct acoustic differences attached to different human identifiers, markers that the researchers interpreted as encoding emotional valence. The sounds used when referencing a human categorized as a food source carry different properties from the sounds used when referencing a human categorized as a threat. The distinction is consistent enough that other crows respond differently to the two types of references. Your status in the crow network is not just stored in one bird's memory. It is discussed, updated, and communicated continuously to every crow in range. When a new person enters crow territory, the broadcast begins immediately. The crow that first encounters the newcomer records what it observes and starts communicating. Others receive the information and pass it on. Within a short time, individual crows that have not yet seen the new arrival are already primed with a profile, already alert to the relevant category, already behaviorally oriented toward this unknown individual in a way shaped entirely by secondhand information from other birds. The AI detected this cascade pattern consistently. A new human identifier would appear in the vocalizations of a single bird and then spread outward through the territory in a wave, reaching individuals who had not been present at the original encounter. Then there are the gatherings the researchers have been studying for decades without fully understanding them. When a crow dies and another crow finds the body, a specific vocalization draws others to the location. The gathered birds circle and watch and produce complex, extended vocal exchanges. But they do not eat the body. They do not fight over it. They do not disperse quickly. They stay, sometimes for extended periods, and they talk. The vocal exchanges during these gatherings were among the most acoustically complex sequences the entire AI analysis identified. Research at the University of Washington found that crows that attended these gatherings subsequently changed their behavior around the location and circumstances associated with the death, in ways that could only be explained by their having extracted specific threat information from what was communicated during the event. The gatherings function as investigations. The crows analyze what happened, determine what specific threat is associated with the death, encode that information in a transmittable form, and then distribute it to the living. The crow gathering around a dead crow is not mourning in any simple sense. It is writing a warning in a form the flock can carry forward. This location, this type of object, this circumstance, fatal. Avoid. Tell the others. The AI mapped how specific vocal patterns spread geographically and found something that stopped the researchers. Individual crow vocalizations travel between flocks over distances of hundreds of miles. A specific new call structure appearing in one city's crow population shows up in populations far away months later, moving flock by flock in a relay pattern. The crows have what the researchers described as an analog communication network, an oral tradition that distributes information across their world the same way critical information distributes through human populations, through social transmission. One individual to the next, each one passing the signal forward. When a new type of danger appears in one location, knowledge of that danger can spread across an entire region before most of the crows in that region have ever directly encountered it. They are collectively updating their shared knowledge base in real time, drawing on experiences that happen to birds they have never met and never will meet. And then the study encountered something the researchers had not planned for and still have not fully explained. As the AI analysis progressed and the research team became more sophisticated in its methods, something changed in the crow populations near the study areas. A new structural pattern appeared in their vocalizations, something the machine had not seen in any of the earlier data. It spread through the local flock with the same speed any other information moves through the crow network. Then it spread outward into neighboring territories. The effect on the AI's ability to classify and interpret crow communication was immediate and measurable. The confidence metrics that had been reliable throughout the study dropped sharply. The machine that had been successfully identifying call categories, human identifiers, planning sequences, and threat broadcasts was now recording something it could not parse. The translation stopped working. The researchers working on the project proposed what they acknowledged is a difficult theory to fully support, but that the behavioral evidence kept pointing toward. Crows are extensively documented as animals that test the boundaries of their environment. They examine unfamiliar objects carefully before interacting with them. They observe potential threats from a distance. Studying reactions before deciding how to respond, they notice changes in the behavior of animals and people around them and adjust their own behavior accordingly. The humans studying them had been behaving in ways that no normal human in a crow's environment behaves. They were freezing in place. They were watching without reacting. They were holding objects, the microphones and recording equipment that produce no response to crow behavior. Normal humans in a crow's territory are predictable. These humans were not behaving predictably. And the crows noticed. The crows discussed it. And then the communication pattern shifted. Whether the crows deliberately altered their communication in response to understanding that it was being monitored and studied is a question the researchers are careful not to answer with false certainty. The honest answer is that they do not know. What they know is that the animals capable of this response are the same animals that have been documented solving multi-stage physics problems in controlled laboratory settings, manufacturing tools from raw plant material to reach food they cannot directly access, encoding specific human faces as named entities in a distributed social network that transmits that information across generations, gathering around the dead to extract it and broadcast specific threat intelligence. The cognitive flexibility required to notice that a monitoring system exists and to change communication patterns in response to that discovery is large. But it is not obviously larger than the cognitive capacities these animals have already demonstrated under controlled conditions. And unlike those laboratory demonstrations, this response, if it is what it looks like, happened spontaneously. in the wild, without anyone designing it as an experiment, without any setup or training. The crows identified a new variable in their environment, assessed it, communicated about it within their network, and the network changed. The machine is still running. The researchers are still collecting data. And the new pattern that appeared in the crow vocalizations near the study area is still spreading outward through the regional crow population, moving from flock to flock the way every important piece of information moves through the crow world. Nobody knows what it says. Nobody knows whether the AI will eventually learn to decode it or whether it represents something the machine will never be able to classify. The researchers are considering the possibility that what they are looking at is a communication system adapting in real time to a specific perceived challenge, a language evolving a new feature in response to a new pressure, in a time frame of months rather than generations. Because these are not animals with the slow adaptive timescale of biological evolution. These are animals with culture, and culture can change fast. What the 2024 study has produced is not a set of neat answers. It is a set of questions that the field of animal cognition is not fully equipped to answer yet. The crows have syntax, they have names for us, they have planning conversations, they have a distributed information network that spans hundreds of miles. They have something that functions like oral history, transmitting specific knowledge forward through generations by deliberate social communication. And they appear to have noticed that we noticed them and responded to that discovery in a way that broke our best tool for understanding them. The question scientists are now seriously working on is not whether crows have language. The 2024 data makes that question feel almost naive. The question is how much of what they are saying we will ever actually be able to hear. Because out there right now, on the wire above your street, on the roof of the building across from yours, in the trees at the edge of the parking lot, there is a crow watching you. It has your face memorized. It has a sound it uses specifically for you. It has already told the other crows in the area who you are and what category you belong in. It may be talking about you right now, in quiet, murmuring sounds, sitting just below the threshold where you would think to pay attention. And the extraordinary, uncomfortable truth that the AI has made visible is that this has been happening your entire life. The surveillance network has always been there. We just did not have the tools to read it until now. And now that we are starting to, the network may already be adjusting.